My mother used to say the military was a place for those who ran out of options. My father dismissed it as a squandered future. My brother chuckled and said combat was no place for women. What none of them realized was that while they were busy belittling my path, I was on track to becoming one of the youngest colonels in the history of the U.S. Air Force. The annual Morrison family dinner was in full swing. Crystal glasses clinked in rhythm with laughter as relatives toasted Michael's latest promotion at Anderson Global, the company where Dad held a senior VP title. The dining room echoed with well-rehearsed compliments and polite clapping as Michael proudly recounted his ascent up the corporate ladder. Junior Vice President of Operations by the age of 30. That's how a Morrison does it, my father declared, raising his glass in triumph. I sat in silence, absently moving food around my plate, my mind replaying all the times he said I was throwing away the family name by choosing the military over a business career. A decade of accolades, commendations, and rising through the ranks. And still, in this room, I was the black sheep who never quite fit the mold. So Sarah, Aunt Patricia asked, her tone laced with fake interest. Still pretending to be G.I. Jane? I looked her in the eye. Yes. I'm still serving. My mother jumped in before I could elaborate, her voice cheerful but urgent. Sarah's working in admin now. Some kind of computer work, right, sweetheart? Some kind of computer work actually meant commanding the Air Force's top-tier cybersecurity division and leading a specialized team of over 300 people. But they didn't have the clearance to know that. And I'd long since given up trying to make them understand. What a waste, Uncle Robert added. With your education, you could have had a real job by now, earned real money like Michael. Michael raised his glass with a smug grin. It's not too late, sis. I could probably get you an entry-level job in my department. Something more appropriate for a woman. The table erupted in chuckles and knowing smirks. I gripped my water glass a little tighter. I thought about the top-secret presentation I'd just delivered to the Joint Chiefs. The commendation from the President sitting quietly in my office. The classified mission I'd be spearheading tomorrow, one that would dominate headlines. Not that I could ever claim credit for it. Sarah just needs to accept that not everyone's suited for the corporate world, my father said, disappointment dripping from every word. The military's, well, it's a decent fallback. Fallback. I nearly laughed out loud. They had no idea that Anderson Global, his beloved company, had been aggressively courting a defense contract for my division for months. A contract I'd be reviewing first thing tomorrow. I heard they let women be officers now, my cousin Emma offered helpfully. Maybe you can move up, get to, I don't know, sergeant or whatever? I held back a correction. Let them wallow in ignorance. Tomorrow would be interesting enough. Then my mother's face lit up with an idea. Oh. You remember James, don't you? Sarah's friend? He just launched a tech startup, and he's single now. Maybe it's time you settled down. Found a nice man to take care of you. James. I barely suppressed a grin. They meant Major General James Harrison, my commanding officer, very much not single unless you counted his recent divorce from his husband. The same James who would be sitting across from Anderson Global's board members in tomorrow morning's meeting. I'm focused on my career right now, I replied evenly. My father scoffed. What career? Filing paperwork in some government office? You had so much promise, Sarah. You could have been something. I rose slowly and placed my napkin beside my plate. I should get going. Big meeting tomorrow. Of course, Michael said with a smirk. Wouldn't want to be late for roll call. As I walked toward the front door, my father's voice chased after me. One day, you'll understand what you've thrown away, Sarah, my father had said, his voice heavy with pride and disappointment. The Morrison name used to carry weight in this city. What he didn't know was that by this time tomorrow, the Morrison name would carry weight once again, just not in the way he expected. Seated in my car, I reached for my encrypted phone and dialed a secure number. We're all set for tomorrow, Major. Yes, Colonel, came the firm voice on the other end. Launch is scheduled for 0900 hours. Anderson Global won't know what hit them. I couldn't help but smile, already picturing the look on my father's face when he realized who actually held the cards in that meeting. Ensure everything is in order. No loose ends. I want it flawless. Understood, ma'am. Though, I still think they deserve to know who you really are. I watched the warm glow of my parents' house shrink in the rearview mirror. They'll find out soon enough. Back in my apartment, not the humble military quarters my family likely imagined, but a penthouse that overlooked the skyline, I opened the mission files one final time. Anderson Global's cybersecurity infrastructure was a ticking time bomb, outdated, exposed, and in critical need of modernization. They were desperate for our contract, though they hadn't yet realized just how desperate they truly were. My phone buzzed. A message from Michael. Seriously, sis. Rethink that entry-level job. It's better than wasting your life pretending you're in a war. I set the phone down without replying and opened my laptop. The classified intelligence report on the screen laid bare the vulnerabilities that would take center stage at tomorrow's board meeting. Sometimes, the most satisfying revenge isn't shouting, "I told you so." It's standing quietly as they realize it themselves. I walked to my closet, pushing aside the casual wear to reveal my dress blues. Medals glinted softly under the overhead light. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be Sarah, the disappointment. I'd be Colonel Sarah Morrison, commanding officer of the United States Air Force Cyber Operations Command, and the person with Anderson Global's fate in her hands. My father loved to say the Morrison name had influence in this city. Tomorrow, he'd see how right he was, just not in the way he imagined. I picked up a photo frame from my desk. I was 18 in the picture, wearing my Air Force Academy uniform with pride while my family stood beside me, their expressions strained with disapproval. 10 years. Countless missions. 3 promotions. And now, I was about to show them what their fallback daughter had become. The next morning, I arrived at Anderson Global's headquarters an hour before the board meeting. My uniform was flawless. Ribbons and insignia perfectly aligned. The security guard at the front desk did a double-take when he saw my ID. "Colonel Morrison, are you related to the VP?" "Yes," I said plainly. "I'm his daughter." He stood at attention the moment he spotted my rank. "Ma'am, Major General Harrison is waiting in the executive conference room." I stepped into the private elevator and pressed the top floor, memories of childhood visits to my father's office swirling in my mind. Back then, this building had seemed like a shrine to success. Now, it was just another battleground. James was waiting inside, his uniform equally sharp, commanding immediate respect. "Ready, Colonel?" "Always, sir," I said, scanning the final slides of the presentation. By 8:45, board members began filing into the room. My father entered last, engaged in quiet conversation with Michael. Neither noticed me standing in the corner, partially obscured behind a large monitor. "Let's begin," my father said, settling confidently at the head of the table. "As you're aware, today's discussion centers around the military cybersecurity contract. Our tech team has..." "Actually," James interrupted, rising from his seat, "I'll be leading this session." He turned toward me. "Colonel, if you would." I stepped into full view. My father's face went pale. Michael's confident smirk disappeared in an instant. Confused glances darted between them and me as the board tried to make sense of the moment. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady and commanding. "I'm Colonel Sarah Morrison, head of the U.S. Air Force's Cyber Operations Command. We're here to address the critical weaknesses in your digital infrastructure." "Sarah," my father started, his voice faltering. I tapped a button. A classified report filled the screen. 3 months ago, our systems flagged a series of breach attempts targeting your company's servers. Foreign entities have been probing your networks, seeking access to client databases, intellectual property, and classified materials. The room tensed. Several board members shifted uneasily. Michael stared at the decorations on my uniform as if seeing them, and me, for the first time. "Your current security protocols," I paused, letting the silence stretch, "are dangerously insufficient. This contract isn't just business. It's a matter of national defense." I flipped to the next slide, detailed diagrams of their vulnerabilities, their weakest access points, their compromised systems. Gasps rippled through the room. My father's face had lost all color. "Colonel Morrison," one board member finally asked, "what are our options?" Before I could respond, my father tried to interject. "Now just hold on, Sarah, you can't just..." "That's Colonel Morrison, Mr. Vice President," James cut in firmly. "And she absolutely can. In fact, she's the only one authorized to sign off on this contract." I laid out the terms, complete compliance with strict cybersecurity protocols, a full infrastructure overhaul, and regular audits conducted by my division. The proposed cost made a few of the executives wince, but we all knew the truth. Non-compliance meant total collapse. If you refuse, I stated, we'll have no choice but to classify Anderson Global as a national security liability. That would result in the immediate termination of all current and future government partnerships. My father clenched his jaw. He understood what that would mean, the end of Anderson Global's dominance. You have 24 hours to decide, I concluded. As the room slowly emptied, my father remained seated, staring at me like I was someone he'd never met. Michael stood near the exit, stunned into silence. All this time, my father finally whispered. You were a colonel? In charge of cyber operations? You're the one holding this company's future. I offered a faint smile. Surprised I turned into all the things you said I couldn't be? Why didn't you tell us? Would it have made a difference? I asked. Or would you have dismissed it, like everything else I've done? Michael stepped forward, voice shaky. Sis, I didn't know. Clearly, I replied coolly. Oh, and that entry-level job you offered me? I glanced over my shoulder on my way to the door. I make 3 times your salary. That's just base pay. I gathered my materials, ready to leave. That's when my father rose abruptly. Wait, can we at least talk as a family? I turned, holding his gaze. A family? I asked. Last night you said I was wasting my life, that I'd never amount to anything. Well, here I am. This is what I've become. And at this moment, I'm not your daughter, I'm an officer fulfilling her duty. James stepped into the doorway. Time to go, Colonel. The Joint Chiefs are expecting us. Michael blinked. Joint Chiefs? He muttered. I nodded. Apparently, pushing paper in the service does lead somewhere. That night, my phone lit up with messages. My mother, now suddenly overflowing with pride. Aunt Patricia, full of apologies. Cousins asking if I could help their children enlist. I ignored every message, poured myself a glass of wine, and stared out over the skyline from my penthouse, the one they were so sure I couldn't afford on a military paycheck. A week later, Anderson Global finalized the deal. The largest contract in the company's history. The board quietly voted to replace my father, offering him early retirement. Michael's division was the first to undergo a full audit. I didn't show up for the signing ceremony. I was in D.C., presenting a report to Congress on cybersecurity vulnerabilities and foreign threats. Later, I received an email from my father. A mixture of apology and regret. I was wrong, he wrote. You've become something I never saw coming. My response was brief. I didn't become anything. I was something all along. You just refused to see it. 2 months passed. I received a new star on my shoulder, officially the youngest brigadier general in Air Force history. The ceremony was attended by senators, foreign diplomats, and senior military brass. My family sat quietly in the back row. My mother wept. My father looked like the wind had been knocked out of him. Michael, flustered, gave a clumsy salute. At the reception that evening, a young lieutenant approached me. General Morrison, she said, your words about forging your own way, even when your family doesn't understand, really spoke to me. Mine doesn't support my career either. I smiled, the memory of that old photo flashing in my mind, me at 18 in my academy uniform, my family grim-faced in the background. Let me tell you a story, I said. It began at a dinner table where I was told I'd never amount to anything. She listened carefully as I recounted my path. Around us, the room buzzed with conversation. Generals, politicians, decision-makers. Through the window, I saw my family at their table, isolated, uncertain, out of place in a world they never thought I'd be part of. Sometimes, success isn't about proving anyone wrong. Sometimes, it's about affirming that you were right all along. And once in a while, the road you're warned against turns out to be the only one worth taking. I reached up and touched the silver star on my shoulder. I thought of all the long nights I'd spent studying while Michael was out celebrating, the operations I'd led while they toasted shallow victories, the promotions I earned while they doubted me. My father always insisted the Morrison name carried weight in this city. He wasn't wrong. But now, it stood for something else, something he couldn't define, couldn't claim, and certainly couldn't control. It stood for earned respect. It stood for leadership and grit. It stood for choosing a path no one believed in, and turning it into something extraordinary.